live for the Schiller Hamilton Podcast, which is great. This is the first one we've done in a while. I think really a couple months with the summer vacations and everything. Of course, today we're joined by Rob Masone. Rob, thanks for coming in today, man. I know you're super busy, and you know everyone knows you by Chef Rob. We were talking right before we got on, and I was like, dude, I've only ever read your last name. Everyone just Chef Rob. Yeah. Everyone knows who you are. And it's funny, quick anecdote. We were down in Seabrook Island for vacation earlier this summer, and we were at the beach, and the kids are playing with all these other kids. They're chasing crabs and everything. And these folks that I didn't know were standing on the beach with us. The guy's wearing a Quail Hollow hat. So I just said, oh, y'all from Charlotte, striking up conversation. They said, yeah, what about you? I said, well, we live in Rock Hill. And they go, oh, do you know Chef Rob? And I'm like, actually, yeah. I mean, of course we know Chef Rob. And they're like, oh, we love Kounter. Like, you know, he did my wife's birthday party. Like, he's phenomenal. So the moniker celebrity chef, I think, tends to apply here because you're well known apparently far and wide. So yeah, thanks for coming in. You have a lot going on. I want to get into that a little bit. I mean, kind of go down the list. You have a lot of projects between the restaurant, catering, the events, and your other stuff that you're opening. Can you just kind of give us a lay of the land? Like, what is your project list and what are you working on these days?
Well, Joel, thanks for having me. It's really good to be here. Appreciate it. And it is pretty cool to be known in other parts of the state, a little bit of the country. It's very humbling. We like to do a good job, and I guess it shows. So thank you. But so my project list, I think it's never ending. People tell me that I just get bored every few years, and I want to do something else. And I think we're coming up on one of those times. Currently, Create Events with a K, KRE, the number 8 events and experiences is our mother company. Okay, so we are a full service catering event business. We're able to travel on a national level and do a lot of really fun and cool things. But we handle everything from tents, tables, chairs, floral division. I mean, you name it. We take it. I like to tell my clients we can take it to the moon, or we can stay right here on level ground. It just depends on, it's dollars at the end of the day. But so that's a lot of time. That's a lot of logistics. It's not just the food with that. So that's logistics and planning. And if we're working in Phoenix, or if we're working in Vegas, or if we're working in Atlanta or Charlotte or Charleston, wherever we're working. So then of course we have Kounter in Rock Hill on Main Street, which is Kounter's my baby. We've been open at Kounter now for almost 3 years. December 15th, it'll be 3 years. So we got started with that concept during the middle of COVID, or in the middle of COVID. So that was really fun. Twisted Eats is my food truck division. Twisted Eats got started back in 2015. And for about 6 years, we did all the food service for Wood and Robot Brewing in South End. And then we branched out from there, and we're involved with Hoppin' in South End, and we did all their food service, and then their sister restaurant, or their sister concept, Penthouse in Plaza Midwood. So that kept us busy for a long time, and if that's not enough, I do have you ever heard of Seaside, Florida?
Yeah.
Okay, so in between Panama City and equidistant between Panama City and Destin is a little place called Seaside.
Yeah.
And so I have a little Airstream on Airstream Road there on 30A, which is a French creperie. It's called Crepes du Soleil. And then across the street from that, we have a little a Cuban restaurant. And it's open air right there on the beach in Seaside. It's gorgeous. So I get to go every 6 to 8 weeks down there and hang out. And there's really not a.
Is that really just an excuse to go there?
I can't. I have to plead the fifth on that. I'm not going to be able to say that.
IRS isn't listening.
No, my staff doesn't need to listen to that. Yeah. So no, my work days are very different when I go down to Seaside, and it's a lot more planning. It's not a lot more owner level. Of course, I'm involved in the culinary aspect down there. That's my main priority. But I've got a great team down there. Actually, I have business partners down there, which is cool because I don't have any down here, and that does allow me to spend most of my time down here. But I've got a great general manager down there. It's just a wonderful, and my business partners down there were clients for many, many years. And then we decided to do something together, so it was really, really cool. And then now we also have we have the gathering space in the back behind Kounter. So that's 6,500 square feet of fun and funky events that we do on site, and we like to host a lot of corporate events, weddings and lunches, dinners, and holiday parties, Christmas parties there. And then, so now it's coming up on that 3-year mark where people say, I just have to do something else. And so now we're expanding Kounter this year. So we're really pumped about that. We're going to have our lounge concept that's going to open in currently the Edward Jones space in the same building we are. And then we're going to go upstairs and we're going to create a speakeasy upstairs, and that's going to be called Elsie's. And Elsie is my my 98-year-old grandmother, and so yeah, it's going to come complete with some fun and funky entrance and all kind of stuff. I'm sure we'll get into.
Yeah, I can't wait to get into all that. But my plan was, Rob, like that's what I really want to talk about is the new and exciting stuff. But you just laid out like all this amazing stuff that you've been working on. And I mean, it seems kind of cliche, but I got to know, like, what came first? How did you get started? Was it the catering? You know, how did all this happen?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I mean, this is what I've always done. I've done this for, I guess I'm 43 now, so I've been working in restaurants since I was 12. So it's always been a passion. And I guess about 25 years ago, let's see. Yeah, probably about that time I started getting really serious with it. And, you know, through school and through everything, I graduated Northwestern High School here. And then from high school, I went to Columbia, or from Charleston to Columbia, and then to the other side of Raleigh, and then the other side of Fayetteville, North Carolina. And I spent about 11 years in Fayetteville, North Carolina. And I was able to work with some really cool people and as the executive chef for some really fun places in a high-end catering business for a number of years. And in 2011, I was chosen to go, or asked to go over and represent the United States of America on Iron Chef, basically, called 59, a television show called 59 Minutes, which is their syndication of Iron Chef over on the eastern side of the world. And so I went to Dubai and played in Dubai for a week, and then from Dubai I hopped a plane and landed in Kabul, Afghanistan in 2011 during the middle of the war.
What?
And yeah, and it was nuts, and I think that's a whole podcast in itself, and about 3,000 pictures and just nuts. So I represented the United States of America against the golden chef of Afghanistan, Chef Safi at the time, and that was really, really exciting. But thank God, came back from that. That was really fun. Again, that is a whole other story we could get into.
Wow. Yeah, I wasn't even aware of that.
Yeah, it's neat.
Yeah.
Next time you're in Kounter, there's all kind of stuff on the walls that you could read about it. And I can actually probably dig out an old desk that we could watch and crack a couple beers and have fun doing that one night. But so then I moved to Charlotte, and I moved back to Charlotte to open Heist Brewery, actually in Noda.
When was that?
2012.
Okay.
Yeah, so I left in 97, came back in 2012, worked with Heist for a couple years, built their culinary program, built their event program, and then I said, you know, this is just something that I just need to be able to do for myself. So I called some clients, and I talked to some folks and some friends, and everybody said, "Hey, Chef, I don't care who we write a check to as long as you're doing it." And I said, cool, that was the boost of confidence that I needed. So I went down to the bank, opened a business account with $500. Only $500 I had, and started Create Experiences. And Create Experiences opened in the end of 2014. It was established, I should say, and I had some jobs lined up, and I just went on hope and prayer. No investors, no anything like that, and that's kind of how that started with Create. Bid a job for at the Aviation Museum in Charlotte, and American Airlines and MasterCard liked what I threw out there so much, they asked me if I could recreate that at a lot of venues around the country, and I did, and they paid me a lot of money to do that, and that's how I got started. And so instead of just wasting the money, I reinvested in it in rentals and different things, and decor, and built bars and built things and bought vehicles, and to be able to do what I needed to do, and that's kind of how Create started. And Create is the mother company of everything else that we do, to answer that question directly. So Create, then we started Twisted Eats, or I started Twisted Eats. That's a great story. We were doing an event in Wooden Robot I think it was for Wells Fargo, and I was talking to Josh and Dan, the owners of Wooden Robot, and I'm a firm believer that some of the best business decisions happened over a cocktail or a couple beers. And I think beer one, we were talking, and it was like, you know, we should figure it. They were like, we need to find a food truck that can come here. Beer two was like, have you ever worked on a food truck? And I was like, no, I've never even eaten off a food truck. I think by beer three, I decided to buy a food truck. And by beer four, I decided 100% to buy a food truck, and I was going to make everything with their beer. So that's how Twisted Eats was born. And the following week, I found a food truck, bought the food truck. 3 weeks later, it was permitted, and it was sitting outside on the corner of Winifred Street and Tryon, trying to sling food for wooden robot.
Now, what do you mean you were going to make everything with their beer?
So we were making all of our sauces with their beer, all our pastas with their beer. We were doing breads and different things, and we were going to sell it on the food truck. It was a great concept. Yeah. It was super cool. It was Charlotte's first craft beer food truck. And then, so we sat out there on the corner and slung no food for a little while. I mean, $75 a day or here and there, just nothing a lot, right? And then it just, over time, I believed it was consistency. You know, I was not in the market to move my food truck around and like try to find this place and that place and go different places every day. So through consistency and quality of product, we were able to build the brand. And thank goodness I had Create to, help pay the bills as well. Because we were busy with catering and events as well. So that's how Twisted Eats was born. And I think I think our first year out of the gate on Twisted Eats, I think we sold, I don't know, over $800,000 worth of food.
Wow.
Off the side of the street. Out
of trucks.
Yeah, out of a trailer. Yeah, it was cool. Real cool. So that was very humbling. It was really neat. But again, was able, that pays bills, that pays people, right? And then through the catering, through the events, I ended up down in Seaside, Florida, and doing we had a big wedding down there. So it took, a number of site visits, a number of trips down there, and we were big event, big wedding, Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday brunch type of scenario. And then through that, long story short, I became business partners with the bride and groom. So, because they had
vacation. This on the third beer or fourth beer?
You know what? That's a good question. But no, we decided to do something, and we said, hey, let's do something. It would be great to do one of these Airstreams one day. Because they had been vacationing there for years. I had only been there 5 or 6 times at this point, but I'd spent a lot of time there during those 5 or 6 times. And so they were like, all right, well, we'll talk about it down the road. We tabled it. So about 6-7 months later, we picked it back up, and their father had been a client. His firm had been one of my largest clients Create's clients for many years at that point, or a few years at that point, I should say. And so then we decided to do it. So we bought a Airstream, an old 1975 Tradewind 25, and had it converted, shipped it here, bought it online, sight unseen, had it shipped here to Charlotte, converted it to a creperie, shipped it down, and it never moves. It's part of a little place called Airstream Row in Seaside, Florida. I need you to Google it and look it up. It's really cool.
Yeah.
And then we did such a great job there doing that Seaside actually asked us if we wanted to do a second concept about a year and a half later. So we did a Cuban concept across the street. That's a brick and mortar. So that is how we got into Seaside, or I got into Seaside. And then while I was there, Alicia Fernandez, my director of operations, called me and said, hey, chef, there's something you've always wanted to do something in Rock Hill. There's a spot that is available. And so I don't know if you want to look at it. So, excuse me, we set it up and came down to look at it. And it was the old Palmetto room in the back, which is now the gathering space. And then we went forward, and it was the old Five and Dime that was closed down for 2.5 years, I think, at that point. And boom. And that's how Kounter kind of got started. And then I guess the world shut down because that was right at, I think I signed the lease and everything on, I think, March 15th, something like that. And I think, literally that's when, everybody thought the zombies were going to come for us, the following week. It was, that scary time.
Brutal.
And so I was working with a local bank at that point, and we were all done. We had been working on this for months, and they were like, cool. And all of a sudden COVID happened. They were like, pause. Yeah, everything stopped. We're like, okay, no small business loans, no anything right now. Everything's on pause. And I was like, well, that stinks because we were not on pause yesterday.
Yeah.
And so Create paid for everything at Kounter. So I paid cash for the entire upfit, the entire everything. So
you had to really.
So
go
I'm all in.
Yeah.
I'm all in, man. It's that was it. There was nothing. I went through a divorce in 2020. I went all in on Kounter in 2020. 2020 was an exciting year to say the least. But on December 15th, 2020, we were able to open, and it was awesome. It was really cool. We opened at the right time.
Yeah.
We had the holiday bug. People were ready for Christmas. It was the election was over. No matter what side of the coin you stood on, at that point, it didn't matter. It was just over.
Yeah.
And the vaccine was poking its head out, and so people were ready to get moving around. And we did a lot of great training, had some great media nights, brought in the right influencers, and we opened on all cylinders, and it was really cool. And we were pretty busy from day one.
Wow. And I know opening a restaurant, even under the best circumstances, has got to be just a really intense task. But when you layer all the COVID regulations and requirements on top of that, how did that, well, other than just the shutdowns and everything, but how did that change or delay what it was you were trying to do? I mean, it's almost like you have to relearn everything.
It was insane. I mean, just the construction delay. I mean, we couldn't get glass. Mm-hmm. The city was really responsive during that time. There was nothing else really going on. So, I mean, historical, we could get answers, things like that. So that was a plus. Mm-hmm. But, you know, if one painter got sick, then, like, they're out for, like, 2 weeks. Like, nobody could come back. And then, or the plumber got sick. I mean, I think we went through 3 plumbing companies doing this at the very beginning. Mm-hmm. It was insane because they just couldn't come to work. One person would get sick, like I said, and they'd just be out. You never knew when they were coming back, or they just wouldn't come back. And so it was very interesting. And then, you know, when you actually get open, and then all the COVID restrictions with, you know, just with the health department and with everything else, and just trying to learn what we used to say, what's going to be the new normal, right? And so trying to learn the new normal back then was pretty intense. And listen, we're not medical professionals or any of these first responders or these folks that were like on the front lines, but man, there's not really much more front line than picking up somebody's dirty dishes off of their table. Yeah. Really, right? Than cleaning up after them. I mean, if these people are sick or they're not sick, I mean, we have their germs. And
that's about as public as you can possibly be.
About as public as you can possibly be. That's right. I mean, we're not walking up with face masks. And I mean, we had masks, but where there's no barriers in between us and waiting on you. But, you know, COVID was different for everybody. But you know, we handled it pretty well. We just rolled with the punches. I mean, again, we were all in, and so was so many other people.
Was there even a moment of hesitation when the bank told you that and you had to make that decision to go all in? Or was it just, okay, then this is what we have to do?
Man, this is all I know.
Was it that? Was it the location? Was it Rock Hill? Was it all the above? Like, what about it were you like, okay, that's fine. We're going to go ahead and make this happen anyway.
Yeah, I think it was all of the above. I mean, I grew up here. I didn't have anything to come back here for. My parents both passed away a long time ago. And I told myself I'd never come back here. But through Create and through working with people.
Well, in all fairness, Rock Hill has changed a lot since you probably told yourself that.
Yeah, I tell you what, you're absolutely right. It 100% had changed a lot. And then, but opening Create and being able to work with, you know, with Worthy's Boys and Girls Club and Anita over at Affinity Health, and getting involved with the hospital and doing the physicians events, and just being able to get connected with some of the powers that be in Rock Hill. Mm-hmm. You know, I remember just the sense of home, if you will, and there's a lot of cool things happening in Rock Hill. Yeah. And I saw the growth potential with, you know, the Anderson was built and 139 was rocking, and you know, just Main Street was starting to get a little life in it, and I just believe in that. And then, of course, I mean, the history of, you know, of Kounter is huge, and that made a huge impact.
Were you familiar with that history?
I was familiar with that history. We grew up going to First Presbyterian right down the road, but you know, we didn't come in. I mean, it was a lot of different things throughout the years. It was shut down for a while. There was a roof over it for a while, you know, on downtown on Main Street. But yeah, I knew about it. I'm surprised that we don't know more about it, and we didn't learn more about it in schools, because it is such a huge part of the civil rights movement. What happened here, but you know, so that's part of my job every day, is to continue to try to educate folks and my staff to educate folks on what happened at the Kounter in 1961.
So when you were first told that this space is available, was it kind of like a light bulb moment, like, oh yeah, that's it? Or were there other contenders for the spot that you were going to fill? Or
yeah, I think I knew I wanted the spot immediately, because before I even realized where we were, we came in the back in the old Palmetto room, and I wanted the event space. I wanted to lock in the event space and do stuff for events in Rock Hill, because we were doing so many already. I wanted to create a space that we can continue to do and have an on-site venue. And I didn't really realize the history or where we were until we came up, because we didn't come in on Main Street, if that makes any sense. We came in on the back
parking lot.
That's right. Yep. Yeah. And so then when I realized, you know, the second gen kitchen and everything else like that, and the Kounter was there, but you couldn't see it. It wasn't exposed. So I think the Kounter concept was born a little bit later, I started getting a little bit of backlash because I was a young white professional that was going to come in and open something in historically African American history. You know, Spotwood has so much rich history, right? So I thought that it would be a good idea to. I called a friend that's in the media business. I said, I don't know what to do because I'm getting pushback from people that I don't even know, people that don't even live here, just people. And so he reached out to the local news channel, and we reached out to Visit York County, and they reached out to Mr. David Williamson, which is one of the surviving Friendship Mind members, and he came out, and I met with him for about 45 minutes, Joel, and it was one of the coolest experiences I've ever had. Not because of who he was, or just because of who he was, I should say, or the history or what he had, but it was like talking to my granddad for like 45 minutes. We talked about fishing, we talked about ball, we talked about his experience and what happened in January 1961, and we talked about all kinds of things. And we were in the middle of a demo process, and I had ripped off the counter was covered with a bar facade for many, many years. And so when I kind of carefully took that off, I actually exposed the pink laminate on the countertop. And so he was in that day, and we sat where he sat, and he hadn't seen it.
That's pretty powerful.
It was super powerful.
It's like a time capsule.
It was unbelievable because we sat there and we talked about all these things, and he would just unconsciously, I know you guys probably can't see this from where you're listening from, but he would just rub the hand. We were talking, and he was rubbing his hand right here on the counter and just kind of subconsciously doing this. And that was my light bulb moment where I was like, there's no way we're covering this back up. We're going to make this the focal point of the restaurant. We're going to cook behind it because, that's what used to happen back there. They used to be pulling out biscuits from the toaster and doing little things with the lunch counter, right? We're gonna turn this into something badass in 2020 and talk about what happened here such a long time ago. And that's exactly what we did.
And those are the original stools at the counter as well, right?
That's the original stools, and that's the original foot rail. So when you sit there, it's the original stools, and your feet are hitting the foot rail, and that pink top, we brought in a company that did a special laminate process. Because technically or generally you scuff up the surface so your laminate will stick, but they came and did a different process for that. And I left the nail holes, the coffee stains from back then. I'm like, all of it's just natural. You can see where somebody set a pot of coffee on there 50 years ago. Or
that is
whatever
so cool.
I mean,
what a connection with history. And people don't realize, when you have the opportunity to sit and meet with one of the people involved with that makes it truly living history. But for even people who don't have that experience, to be able to come sit down and see, it was a time capsule. It's almost fortuitous that it was covered for so long, because otherwise all those things might not have been preserved otherwise.
That's right. Yeah, 100%. And I think that was Rock Hill. There was an initiative years ago for Rock Hill to preserve it, and that was their way to preserve it, is to cover it. And I think that's great. I'm glad that they did that. There was a lot of powers that be that made that decision, and it's wonderful because was able to preserve it somewhat. Now it's sealed, signed, sealed, delivered, and it's really cool. One of the craziest things that we get at Kounter is we get all walks of life, and it's great because in 1961, African American man or woman was not able to sit down at that counter, and now we can have everybody. We get folks. We like to say we have an elevated dining experience, and we get folks that come in shorts and a t-shirt, flip-flops, jogging suit, sit right next to somebody with a sports coat and a Rolex and having conversation and sharing stories and eating dinner and having conversation and talking about what I'm doing or one of my sous chefs are doing behind the counter and talking about the history of what happened where they're sitting. And I can't count on both of my hands the times that I've watched grown men get up from that counter with tears in their eyes because they didn't understand. They didn't know. It's not that they didn't understand. They understood. They didn't know the history of where they were sitting before they got there. And once they learned about it and once they were taught about it and once they had that crazy cool experience that there right then and thought about what happened back then, they would leave in tears. And that's very moving and very powerful.
As the restaurateur and the owner and the chef and, this whole thing is your baby, how does that compare to in your mind, in your experience of it, to the actual the dining and the cuisine and the food preparation and everything that goes into that versus the culture that you kind of have in the restaurant. Which of those two things are they equally fulfilling? Does one kind of create the other for you, or are both of those things part of the experience?
Yeah, I think it's both of those things are part of the experience. I think, but one does feed off the other, right? I mean, I love being involved on the floor. I love being involved in the dining room. I love being involved on the line in the kitchen. I can only be one place at a time, and that's why I have to have a great team around me to make sure that they believe in the concept and believe in my vision and are smart enough and educated enough to carry it through. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think that building a culture at Kounter that like we've done helps motivate me, helps motivate the team. We don't have a lot of turnover. We go through the same things that most other restaurants go through, but man, we've got a core team that is rock solid. Mm-hmm. It's hard to build on that core team these days, but that core team is rock solid. And whether it's culinary, front of the house, on the door, on the floor, and on the line, in the prep area, on the management team, I've got one of the best management teams, I like to say, in the industry. And a lot of that is because they care, and it's passion. And yes, they care about what happened there, and they care about what we're doing now to preserve that history. They also care about me and my vision, and they care about our staff and their well-being. And I like to say, or I don't like to say, but the history there at Kounter and what happened at the Kounter is held hostage by the success or the failure of what the business is there. Mm-hmm. And so I've got currently, we just hired 2 more. I've got 46 employees at Kounter, and that's kind of a lot in Rock Hill, I think.
Yeah.
For a restaurant that has 72 seats and 6 outside, so 78 seats. We got a lot of people that count on me to do my job and to be passionate and to keep growing and to keep learning and to keep putting out fun and funky things and pushing the boundaries on what we're doing.
And honestly, as you're telling me all this, I'm like, there's so many people who are good at a thing, whether it's a professional, whether it's a chef, whether it's a doctor, a lawyer, or a plumber. You can be a fantastic doctor or a fantastic plumber or whatever the case may be, but that doesn't mean you're also a good business person.
Sure.
And in most instances, those two things are just not in the same human. So for you, you mentioned getting into restaurants when you were 12 years old. When did the business side kick in?
I think the business side probably kicked in when, I don't know. I think when people were just handing me big checks to do stuff for other people.
You're like, what can we do with this?
They were handing me really big checks for me to literally hand over to somebody else. And I was like, man, what do we, but then that entity, and whatever happened to the money after that, I don't know. But I think I started saying, okay, we could allocate this, we could do this, we could do this, we could do this. And those things weren't happening. And so that's when I said, hey, I should just try my hand at doing this myself. I think that's when the business sense kicked in. But again, I've got to give credit to my team too, because you're right. There's sometimes that I need to wear my chef hat a lot more than I need to wear my owner hat. Or there's a lot of times I need to wear my owner hat more than my chef hat or my event planner hat or whatever. So my team is very diverse. And listen, I've been working with my CPAs are great. You can't do this. It's expensive to do business. I don't think I need to tell you. In this country, it's wonderful that we're able to do business for ourselves in this country, but if you do it right, it's So I have to have good people that make sure that everybody's getting paid. So,
yeah.
But yeah, it's a full time. You never know. My days are crazy. My calendar is crazy. But yeah, I don't know. That is right. You have to surround yourself with good people.
So speaking of surrounding yourself with good people, you wouldn't be able to grow and scale if you didn't do that. And you have some big projects. You mentioned the speakeasy and the lounge.
Yep.
Downtown Rock Hill is definitely experiencing a new renaissance, but y'all are a big part of that. So it's like, I'm not sure which is driving the other, but y'all are definitely a big part of that. Tell me a little bit more about the decision to say, okay, this is what I'm going to build. This is what Rock Hill is lacking? Was that more of this is a Chef Rob passion and this is what I want to do? Or was there what was the strategy there to get you moving in the direction of a speakeasy in the lounge and with that being the next step?
Yeah, that's a good question. Because if you'd asked me 5 years ago if I'd have, wanted to open a speakeasy, I would have said no. But if you'd have asked me 6 months before I bought a food truck back in the day, I would have said, why the hell would I buy a food truck? So I think I saw the need, and we're ready to expand, and the goal is for me to buy that building. Okay, and so we're in the process of starting that process as well, to be part of that building, and it made sense. We're right here. The tenant over here, Jim Pallone is awesome. He's one of the coolest guys I've ever met. Super smart. Had a great career. But I am a huge advocate of restaurant and retail on Main Street in Rock Hill, and the space is right there, and it's prime for me to expand. So rather than going and trying to pick up other properties on Main Street, I can be in one building, which there's a lot of perks to that.
Yeah.
So
one kitchen, same permits, expansion. We don't have to. There's a number of things and steps that we don't have to go through. But man, there's so many great restaurants in Rock Hill to go to. There's a lot of fun. There's a lot of fun bars and some great breweries in Rock Hill. But there's nothing really. I had a lot of clients or a lot of guests in at dinner at 8:30 at night. Where do I go? I'd like a cocktail. I'd like something higher end. And you said, good luck.
And I said, I don't know.
That's not what Rock Hill is right now.
Right. No, I could send them across the street to Tattoo. I could send them down to Player One. Those are great spots, right? But it was not what they were looking for. Mm-hmm. So I said, let's do this lounge concept. It'd be perfect. It's 18. There's 1,600 square feet over there. We could be cocktail forward. Let's do it. It won't be a crazy upfit. We'll do small plates, charcuterie, and desserts. And that's kind of how that started. And then we were looking at the blueprints of the building, and we're like, where there's a staircase here. Where did this staircase come? There's no staircase over there, but it's on the blueprints. And we're like, okay, so I went upstairs, and there's an old realtor's conference room because the realtors used to own that building. And there was a big conference room up there. You may have been in meetings up there before, but it's about a 1,700 square foot conference room. And it's been empty for 3.5 years. So I literally went up there, called the building owner. I was like, hey, Justin, I'll find the staircase. He was like, cool, do it. And so I ripped up the floor, and I found the daggone staircase. And it goes down into the first level, into the Edward Jones spot.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah. And so during our feasibility study, city comes out, mechanical, everybody comes out, and they were like, yeah, footings look good. Mechanical's or structural's like, yeah, all this looks good. You're pretty able to use it. Architects come back, and they're like, yeah, code's changed a little bit. So city inspector says it's about a 1/2 inch off, blah, blah, blah. So we're not able to use the original staircase. So we're gonna build another one. But that's kind of how upstairs happened. It makes sense. It's just one thing is falling in behind the other. And so upstairs is going to be called Elsie's. And upstairs is going to be our speakeasy lounge. And it's going to be, man, when I tell you it's going to be cool, it's going to be, the vision boards have started to come together, and the things that we're going to be able to accomplish up there, I think are going to be just next level. And it's going to push the boundaries for Rock Hill, but that's kind of what we do anyway. Mm-hmm. And it's going to be, a lot of it's going to be an ode to my family and my past and my brother and sister's past. I mentioned earlier that Elsie is my grandmother. She's 98 years old next month. And so we're going to have a little live music component. We're going to have a lot of the things from my childhood that when my parents passed that we have, like whether it's books or art or whatever the case may be. The interior designers are really putting a lot of that to work in this spot, and it's going to be very cool. And it's a place that we can tell our story too, and just kind of share, not shove it down anybody's face, but tell our story, and that's really neat to me, because I have these things and they just sit in a warehouse and there's nothing to do with them. They don't fit my decor in my house. They don't fit, it's just, I got nothing to do with it. And it's not even worth any money. It's just stuff that I remember from when I was a child, or my sister or my brother remembers. And so we're going to be able to do some stuff. And my sister's going to do some art up there. It's just going to be a really fun place, but it's going to be, listen, it's going to be all Chesterfield furniture vibe. And it's just going to be really, it's going to be the place where you're going to want to be. So we're working on some cool packages. We're working on some cool membership packages that we're going to offer. But those will be limited. Mm-hmm. So I think the thought right now is that we're going to have around 50 members a year for 3 years. And so there'll be a max of 150 members. And if you don't want to be a member anymore, you have to, the only way to get the membership is to buy the membership. We'll buy it back. Somebody else can buy it. They'll be on a waiting list scenario. Mm-hmm. That number could flux a little bit. It would go down, if anything, rather than go up. But you don't have to be a member to go upstairs. But if you are a member, you get different perks, or maybe different hours, or different bottles, or different selections, or different experience. You'll just get, you'll be a part of something. And I think that Rock Hill wants something that you can be a part of.
Oh, there's no question. Especially since the City Club shut down, you know, that kind of filled that void for a long time. Sorry, Trent, moving away from my own mic. That definitely filled that void for a long time that hasn't been met. And I'm sure you remember, Bentley's Gin Mill at Harry and Jeans. People would, that's out on Dave Lyle at Manchester, and that was always full. That restaurant did really well. And so you're right, that cocktail kind of lounge place just hasn't existed in Rock Hill for a long time now. You've gotten the reception since you announced this project has been pretty phenomenal, at least from the outward observations. Are you surprised at the response? Were you expecting the response, or what has your experience been like?
So I think that I'm ecstatic for the response. First of all, I don't know what I expected. Of course, you always want the response to be, great and overwhelming, and it truly, truly has. And it's interesting. We get so many people from outside of Rock Hill that come and dine with us at Kounter. 36% of our business comes from Rock Hill. And so I know that, we've talked about that before. And so a lot of our base support are folks that are driving from Charlotte for dinner, or driving from Fort Mill, or Waxhaw, or Clover, or Indian Land, or Ballantyne, or Columbia.
And now they can make a night of it.
They can go stay at the Cambria. They can go see our friends Scott and Heidi up at the Eastman Guest House. They can come and hang out and you're right, make a night of it. If there's an event going on at Festival Park, they could head up there, head across the street and play some pinball or whatever the case may be after that. But people have come out of the woodwork, Joel, talking about this. And I think since the press release hit last week and a half ago, I've had people, every table I touch, because I try to touch most of the tables. If I'm not slam busy or just not at the restaurant, I like to say hello to the tables and just check on their dining experience, introduce myself. And 80% of the tables that I've touched in the last week and a half have mentioned Elsie's, mentioned the Speakeasy, said can't wait. People that I don't even know. And it's so crazy because so many people are still first-time guests of Kounter. And I don't know if COVID played a factor in that, or it just kept everybody home for so long, or what the case is, because Rock Hill is not that big. It's what do we have now? 78, 80,000?
Yeah, right around there.
Somewhere around there. And so we're getting all these folks that are driving from out of town. So to have the local response be so great, I'm ecstatic about that. Yeah.
Yeah, that is really cool to see. And again, it's all part of the downtown renaissance that we're seeing now. And it's not the Rock Hill that existed 10 or 15 years ago, or really even 5 years ago. Obviously, the downtown event center has brought people in, but when we were talking about that before, you mentioned that really it's not that crowd that's necessarily coming in on the weekends. And, one thing that struck me, my wife and I were there the other night, and when we were talking, you said, yeah, that table over there came down from, where were they? Was it somewhere in Statesville or?
Yeah, Harrisburg.
Harrisburg. Yeah. And so they had to drive through Charlotte, come all the way over to the other side of Charlotte into South Carolina to come dine there. And you pass through, the Charlotte market and all it has to offer in dining experiences for those people to get to Rock Hill to come to Kounter, which says an awful lot about what y'all are doing in your menu, because there's only so many you either eat somewhere because it's convenient or maybe it's a destination. Sure. If you're lucky enough to be one of those places. You have, whether intentionally or by happy accident, created something that's really a destination for a lot of people. But I want to, you have at Kounter in some of your other places, your menu is known for its creativity and, your combination of different things. I just want to know, where does your inspiration come from for some of the things that you prepare? And, how do you bring all these different flavors together? And do you ever come up with something in your mind and think, that sounds good to me, but that'll never work? Or, how does all this kind of stuff come together for you?
Yeah, I get asked that a lot, actually. I think it's a combination of a lot of late nights a long time ago and a lot of munchies back in the day. And but really, I've been able to travel all around the country and to different parts of the world. I have a Cuban restaurant, so I have Cuban influence. I have a French creperie, so I have all this influence. I taken all these ingredients from just different places that I've been exposed to and putting them together and watching something come out. I mean, I believe in playing with your food. I believe that food needs to be fun. I think that a lot of this is inspired from my catering and event days, which obviously are still going, but there's a very different approach in the catering world than there is in the restaurant world. And what I wanted to do is be able to create that catering and that event experience at the table, not just when you have to pay $200 or $500 to get into a dinner or for a private event. And sometimes things don't work, right? Sometimes the flavor profile doesn't work, and that's the R&D that you're working on. Sometimes it sounds weird, but sometimes I'll put it together, I won't even taste it, and I'll put it on the menu, and it's one of the things, and I won't even taste it. I won't even test it. And I'll just do it, and it just
see what the response is?
And it just happens.
Now, why won't you taste it? Is that intentional? You just never get around to it?
No, I'll taste it, but I won't spend a lot of time in research and development. And I'll just okay, let's do this, let's put it together, and let's freaking sell it. And
so is that creativity of combinations? Is that an art or a science for you, or both?
Well, it's an art. 100% culinary is an art. Listen, food is a science too. Don't get me wrong. I am more of an artist than I am a scientist. So when you start talking about, baking and different things and stuff like that, that's where your science comes in. Yes, we play with that, we indulge in that, and we do a lot of our breads and a lot of our things from scratch too. So, but once we dial those in, those are dialed in. The gastronomy, I played with a lot of that too. There is some infusion of that as well, but I think food is an art for me. I don't consider myself a scientist at all. I've worked with some folks in the past that are ridiculously smart and scientifically smart, and they put that into their food, and the end result is phenomenal. But that's not necessarily the scientific approach. I don't take that approach to the plate. I just play with your food, enjoy it. Your parents always taught you not to play with your food. I encourage you to play with your food. We want to create that experience. We want to create that dynamic, and that's exactly what we're going to do with our cocktails over in Elsie's and in the lounge. It's going to be an experience. You're not going to be able to get the food from Kounter. You're going to be able to get a whole other thing. But the experience is going to come a lot in the cocktails. Where we're making our own dry ice and we're making our own things live there. I mean, it's going to take us. We've got some fun apparatuses that are going to allow us to make dry ice in 90 seconds to order.
Almost seems theatrical.
Badass. I mean, telling you, sorry for my language, but it's going to be cool.
Yeah.
And it's going to be, part of it's going to be theatrical, but it's not going to be there's some places that make that stuff over the top. But, at the end of the day, you can be as creative and whatever as you want to, but it's got to taste good. It's got to taste good. Whether it's a cocktail, whether it's a plate, it's got to taste good. So, yeah, we're able to accomplish those things. And I think that a lot of my inspiration is drawn from the guests and the public. And, we at Create, I don't have a website that you can go to and just pick a bunch of food and build your own menu. I've got a great website you can go to and see a whole lot of things that we've done and things that we currently do, but you don't get to pick A, B, D, F, and all these things. I like to hand tailor the menu for you, for each client, for the bride, for the groom, for the corporate entity, whatever it is. What was your favorite food growing up? What was your least favorite food growing up? Tell me your best story about, like, what's your best memory about food sitting at the table with your mom, your dad, your grandmother, however you were raised. Because, again, everybody's got a story, and everybody's story is different. But what we can do is bridge all this together with a great meal. I mean, where does when you entertain at your home, where does everybody end up hanging out?
In the kitchen.
In the kitchen. When it's Thanksgiving, and where's everybody hanging out?
Same thing.
In the kitchen. It's always in the kitchen. It's always over a meal. It's always pouring love into what you're doing. And I think that a lot of this industry has lost a lot of that.
Yeah. What does that mean to you?
A lot of love, or this industry's lost a lot of it?
How, like, when you say you're pouring love into it, what does that mean?
We got this little vial in the back, and we label it love. It's passion. Mm-hmm. Love is passion, and we're doing this I'm not doing this because I have to do this. I'm doing this because I want to do this. I want to share my gift with you guys. I want to teach people on my team how and why this works like this. I don't have all the answers all the time, but you know what? If I don't have the answer, I'll find it out. But you have to care, and I can teach anybody how to cook. I can teach anybody how to wash dishes. I can teach anybody SOP, standard operating procedure. There's one for everything, but I can't teach you a passion. And so I like to be surrounded by people with a deep passion for food, or for service, or for just people. Not necessarily waiting tables or putting a burger on the grill, but just I want to get to know you. If you're on my team, you're on your family. Saying when we lose people, it hurts because we care about our people. And that goes back to the culture thing. So it goes so much further than what we're putting in the pot or what we're putting on the skillet. It's we're putting love into everything that we do, at the table, at the bar, in the kitchen, wherever. So was that innate for you, or did that come from somewhere? No, I think that came. I mean, I think it's just been in me all my life. My mother was a great cook. My grandmother still cooks. She still does Thanksgiving dinner. Can you believe that? She's 98 years old almost.
That's awesome.
And only thing I do is the bird. It's great. And it's the one time a year that literally I know I've got a bottle of bourbon, I've got cigar, I've got turkey fryer, I'm downstairs in the carport and frying turkey, and everybody else is doing their thing upstairs. Me and my brother, and now my sons are old enough to do this with me, and that's really cool. But so I get it naturally, and I think, and it's just when my parents passed away, like I buried myself in it, and it was my outlet. And so when I'm stressed out or whatever, my go-to place, unless I'm on the boat and fishing, I'm in the kitchen. And still, it doesn't feel like work? No, it doesn't feel like work. Doesn't feel like work. Now, everybody asks me, what television, do you like watching Food Network? No, can't stand it. I mean, love it. Good for everybody there. But when I get off of work, I don't want to continue to watch kitchens. People work in the kitchen. Are there any places, do you like to go anywhere to eat other people's food? Yes, I do. I love to go eat other people's food. I don't get out much in Rock Hill or Charlotte area because I stay busy when I'm here, but when I'm traveling or if I'm in Florida, I mean, unbelievable. Mm-hmm. I definitely grab inspiration from the coastal communities and different things like that, for sure. In my mind, I think back when I was like 6 years old and I would go to a magic show. Yeah. And everything that magician did was like, oh my God, that's amazing. But then you start to learn how they did it, and you're like, there's a trapdoor or whatever. I don't know anything about cooking, and so everything that I eat, I'm like that 6-year-old at the magic show where I'm like completely blown away. Does that go away for you? Like as you learn more about cooking, are you just kind of like, there's a trap, like I see what they did, or do you still apprecite other people's creativity? A little bit of both. I can see through it, but I can also see. Listen, every chef is different. Okay, no, not one of us is going to cook macaroni and cheese the same way. Mm-hmm. Okay, we're just not. So I appreciate their interpretation of a dish, or the way that they might have flipped the script on this and done it this way. I mean, that's what that's why it's called culinary arts. I mean, it is an art, and every artist is a different type of art. And so, yeah, I appreciate the hell out of when I see somebody that's doing their thing. I mean, there's so many on so many different levels. Whether it's barbecue and they're smoking, whether it's gastronomy and they're playing with all kind of new products, and or whether it's, I mean, it could be anything. So yeah, I appreciate it, and I definitely get inspired by when other people are doing fun things. I mean, I think that I try to learn something new every day, whether it's about food or whether it's about my dog. What doesn't matter, but I think that is something that's important to me, to try to learn a little bit of something about something every day, and that keeps it moving. It keeps me fresh. If I'm not staying fresh, then like I said, I got a bunch of employees that are dependent on me to stay fresh.
Yeah. I know a thing or two about that. There's so many things. First of all, the Afghanistan thing, I think we are going to have to do a whole other show for that, because I want to dig into that for sure. But while we're on the subject of the actual process, what is your? Well, I'm curious. Okay, so 12 years old, you get into a restaurant. Your first job,
washing dishes.
What drew you to the kitchen? Why was that your first job?
I mean, I watched my mom cook in the kitchen a lot, I guess. My parents knew the manager at Pizza Inn.
Is that what it
Cherry
was?
Road, so nice. I started busting suds on Pizza Inn, and I learned how to make pizza dough.
Yeah.
And they taught me, and I respected that process. I mean, it was a living thing, and back then, I mean, gosh, there was not a whole lot to eat back in the late 80s, early 90s.
Yeah.
In Rock Hill, there just wasn't, and we didn't go to Charlotte.
I mean, there really wasn't even a whole lot in Charlotte at that time.
No, but
it's not like Charlotte was known as a food destination.
100%. But if we went to Charlotte, and I can't remember going to Charlotte to eat, but like if we went to Charlotte, it was a pack a bag. You're going to Charlotte. I mean, it's an all day thing. Mm-hmm. But yeah, there was. I mean, you remember the Fish Hook?
No.
Back on Mount Gallant. It was awesome. Ryan's Steakhouse on Anderson.
Yeah.
We used to go there all the time. That was my dad's thing. He liked to go there. But I think I was just always drawn to food. My grandmother, my mother, my grandmother, and my dad's mother. I mean, I come from a large Italian family, and I mean, it's just ingrained in you.
So what was the first thing you learned how to make?
Pizza dough.
That was it?
That was it. I learned how to make dough. And that was cool. And I still make dough, and that's definitely graduated over the years. But yeah, I don't make pizza dough professionally, but at the house, yeah, we want pizza. We're making pizza.
So I mentioned I don't know anything about cooking. I try. YouTube is a wonderful resource. But if somebody wanted to get serious, like I want to learn how to cook, where does one even start? Because it seems awfully overwhelming to somebody that just doesn't know anything about cooking. Are there like a 3 or 4 skills that one should really work on first? Are there a couple dishes that you would start with? Where would you start?
Yeah, I think that there's a few factors there. It depends on age. And, if you want to do this for, just for a hobby, or if you want to do it for home, or if you want to try to get into it professionally, they're all going to have little different answers. But I mean, I think you gotta have knife skills. You can watch knife skills all day long, but if you like you picking up a knife and like doing some chopping, I mean, you got to have knife skills. You got to understand and respect, the heat, the flame, the fire. You got to respect it because it's so easy to turn on you. So, I mean, is there any specific dishes that I would suggest starting with? Not really. I mean, so whatever you like. I would say start with what you like. So start with the passion. Pick your favorite meal that you've ever eaten, and how intense it is or how easy it may be, try it. Because, I mean, the goal is to get more intense on what you're doing and what you're learning. And I'm sure that there's a million different YouTube videos like you just alluded to, or there's all kind of culinary degrees you can get online now if you want to go professionally. But if you take that route, I would say, hey, go find a local chef or get to a local restaurant and say, hey, I'm thinking about doing this. Can I just stage with you? And stage is basically a night or 2 nights that you would come in and you would work with the line, and it's generally unpaid. But it just kind of, we do that in the industry to say, hey, I'm going to give you a stage, and you're going to, if you accept it, you get to see what we're doing for a night. And you can see if you like our concept. You see if you think you're going to be able to cook our food. You're going to see, and we're going to be able to see are you able to cook our food? Are you able to follow our processes? It tells us a lot about who you are. So, I mean, and I think, listen, everybody will always learn or always take some free labor for sure. But I think you got to also be, you got to be able to be a team player. If your culinary is not just about cooking, even if whether it's professional or whether it's at your house, you got to be a team player. You got to know you got to do the dishes. You got to do the stuff. You got to clean up after yourself. You can't just leave a mess, right? So you have to be pretty self-organized if you're gonna do it too. So I guess for me, it's just I wear a lot of hats. So I maybe I just overthunk that answer, but I don't know. I get into the kitchen, get dirty. Don't be afraid to get dirty. Knife skills, respect the heat. Burn something and then mess it up and then learn from what you did wrong and then adjust. And so if you can adjust, then you can start creating your own things.
And I guess part of that is don't be too hard on yourself. Like if you're going to screw something up, don't beat yourself up over it.
No, not at all. I mean, that's life. I mean, we've all had our ups and downs in life. And I know that I haven't, I know that maybe this podcast has painted this whole crazy, wonderful picture, but there's been times that it's been very stressful. At the same time, I mean, any entrepreneur, any restaurateur, anything that you do, it's stress.
So what's next? I mean, you said like every 3 years you want to do something else. Are you already thinking 3 years ahead, or just kind of take it as it comes?
I'm gonna take it as it comes right now. Yeah. We'll do something else in Florida, but I think that'll be the next thing for sure. I'm gonna see what happens here in Rock Hill. There is such thing as getting too spread out, and too thin. And I do want to be able to relax and sit back a little bit one day and enjoy what we built.
When you said that your happy place is getting in the kitchen, you like to do that even for fun when you're relaxing. Do you have like a fantasy of like when you get to slow down or retire of just like going somewhere across the world and just like immersing yourself and learning about how to make a certain geography's cuisine or certain area of the world and really learn about their food?
Yes and no. I don't know that I want to go to another part of the world and really dive into their cuisine. I want to eat it. That's great. What I really want to do is I want to have a diner. I want to be open for breakfast and lunch, not need to work, close at 2 p.m. But I'm talking about like the Silver Bullet Diner, really cool, really fun, and just kind of retire like that. And then I do candied pecans, and they're ridiculously good. Mm-hmm. So I kind of want to be that old guy in the farmer's market telling everybody to buy my nuts kind of thing. I know that, listen, I really do. I just toned that down a lot, but like I talk about it. That is my retirement plan. And yes, at Elsie's, you'll be able to get what will be called the retirement plan. And it will be, most likely it will be my candied pecans. We'll make a waffle cone. We're going to paint the waffle cone in chocolate, or the rim it in chocolate. We're going to stud it with bacon, and we're going to fill it with my candied pecans.
Dude, how long do we have to wait for all this? Yeah. Because this place sounds like it's going to be amazing. When are you aiming to open it up?
I'd like to get open by April, May of next year. It just really, really is going to depend on how quickly the Edward Jones can get out. So they are trying to figure out and get started with their new project, their construction project down at the Lowenstein. That's where they're moving to. So as soon as they can get out of the spot, we can start swinging hammers. So hopefully we'll start in October. But if not, we'll start as soon as we can, and it'll probably take us 5 months once we're gone. So, brother, I would love to tell you that I'll be open by April. But
2024 though,
100% 2024.
Okay,
yeah, for sure.
Nice.
The goal is I want to get open April, May, before school's out, before Winthrop lets out, before any of that stuff goes on. But, I don't know that we'll get that. Winthrop's not necessarily going to be our draw by any means. But nobody really vacations.
When I was at Winthrop, I was very rarely able to afford a cocktail lounge experience somewhere.
Very true. Very true. But, a lot.
It was $2 pitchers of Woo Brew at Scandals is really what that was.
Yes.
whatever that Woo Brew actually was.
Oh my gosh, I don't even want to know what that was. But you're right. I've had plenty of that at Scandals back in the day. Oh my gosh, for the money.
Yeah.
Oh, how about that? Yep. Remember those places? Definitely 2024, man. We are ready. Mm-hmm. The architects are ready. They're great.
Well, we're ready.
Yeah.
Rock Hill's ready. I can't wait to go there. I mean, it's going to be a lot of fun. We live right around the corner, so it's going to be definitely within our normal routine, I think, to head on over there.
Awesome. Well, we can't wait to see you there, brother.
Yep. Well, Rob, thanks for coming in.
Yeah, thanks.
Appreciate
for
it. We need to do this again and talk more about what happened when you were over in Afghanistan, because I think we need to do a whole show about that.
Yeah, I'm here for it.
Nice.
All right. Yeah,
All right.
cool.
Thanks,
Awesome.
man.
Well, appreciate it, Joel. Thank you.
Of course.